Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Arant. I am an independent educational consultant with Arant College Planning. I am primarily specializing in Division III and Ivy Patriot League athletic recruitment. Previously, I was a athletic admission liaison at Franklin and Marshall College up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So part of my consulting work is facilitating a series of virtual webinars about the college search and athletic recruitment processes. So our first in a series of panels is the role of athletics admission liaisons. So it's kind of the folks that are acting in between the admission and athletic offices. So before we go ahead and kind of touch topics related to this, I'd like to introduce my two guests. So Elena, would you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thanks, Matt. So, hey, everyone, my name is Elena Wilson. I serve as the Senior Assistant Director of Admissions and Coordinator of Athletic Recruitment at Trinity University in San Antonio. And I strategically placed my virtual background to be a tennis court that we have here at Trinity because I was in your shoes not too long ago, graduated about 7 years ago, but have a lot of experience in Division III athletic recruitment, having gone through it myself, and I've been in this work now for going on 7 years.
Awesome. Thanks, Elena. I'm happy to be here as well. My name is Hannah Marigi. I'm an associate director for undergraduate admission at Babson College. We're located in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and I also serve as the head athletic liaison overseeing our recruitment process as well. I've been at Babson for 13 years and in the role overseeing our athletic recruitment process on the admission side for the past 6 or 7 or so. So we oversee a broad group of teams and processes as well. So very directly involved with the work here and excited to share a bit more about my experience with you.
Okay, great. Thank you both. So before we kind of dive into the specific topics related to what it means to be the role of athletics admission liaison, I just want to offer a brief caveat. As I mentioned, I'm specializing primarily in Division III and then what we call high academic Division I schools. So Ivy League schools, Patriot League schools. And the caveat being these processes are different across all divisions. So there's Division I, Division II, and Division III. So the bulk of our conversations will pertain to Division III as we have our two guests are representing Division III institutions. So briefly, the main contrast between D1, D2, and D3 lies in the eligibility center eligibility requirements, more or less. So the NCAA has what's called the eligibility center. It's really kind of your one-stop shop to kind of chart GPA requirements, course requirements, all those things you need to do in order to be certified, to be eligible, to be a college student athlete. NCAA Eligibility Center is the best place to start for that. So if you just go online to search that in your Google search bar, it'll give you a lot of information to really dive deep to which division you want to pursue. Additionally, the timelines can vary widely across these divisions too. Division I, Division II are often much earlier in the process than Division III, but some Division III sports and some Division III schools specifically have updated their timelines to be a bit earlier than they were maybe a few years ago. And then finally, the biggest piece, probably most relevant to families out there, is the lack of athletic-specific scholarships at the Division III and Ivy Patriot League levels. That's not to say that folks that are student athletes do not receive any financial aid. It's just more related to need-based as well as academic related. So there's not any specific money allocated for a student at the Division III or Ivy Patriot level based on their athletic ability. So I know there's a lot of information to kind of parse between the three divisions. So let's kind of just dive into what it means to be the athletics admission liaisons at the Division III level. So Elena, you want to kind of kick us off in terms of what that looks like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, so a big part of my role in admissions is I oversee the recruitment of 18 varsity sports that we have. And then collectively, that's about 40 to 50 head and assistant coaches that I manage. And I am their go-to person with all things pertaining to admissions. The reason this is so important and the reason that roles like this exist specifically at smaller D3 schools is because we rely a lot on recruiting athletes to build our class. So 25% of our incoming students every year are student athletes. And it's very important that I'm on the same page with the coaches about who is a priority recruit. And it's very important for them to be aware what is it that Elena needs to see on their application and throughout the process to get that student where we need them to be and ultimately be admitted and hopefully join our next year of class. So I am their primary contact. I do have a team of 2 other staff members underneath me, helping with a couple sports specifically that they're passionate about. So that helps. Otherwise, it is quite a demanding job. And then as far as how that impacts the review of the applicant is, at least at Trinity, we don't take what we call coded athletes who have been identified specifically by a coach based on their talent level. We don't bring those athletes to our grand committee to be discussed with our 12 team members. It's actually just myself and our dean of admissions. So it's a very narrow focus there. And I've, probably years with these students and these families working with them throughout the process. So we've built out that trust. And when their application comes to fruition, I can best advocate for that family in the process. And Hannah, I'm sure hopefully you get to enjoy some of that aspect of the job, as well as we genuinely love building relationships with the families and the recruits throughout this process, because we understand it could be a little stressful.
Absolutely. And, relatively similar at Babson as well. So also a Division III athletic varsity institution. We have 23 varsity programs. We always joke that the one big one we don't have is American football. So we say that we've been undefeated since 1919. That's always our big joke that we have among varsity sports at Babson. But as I mentioned in the introduction, I'm the head athletic liaison. And again, as Elena said, really our goal is truly to be that liaison, serve as that mediator, that middle person in between obviously the work that we do in undergraduate admission, recruiting students to be an overall strong fit at Babson, but also recognizing athletic talent and institutional priorities and wanting to bring in strong student athletes and strong academic students to continue to build Babson and also, of course, Trinity and whatever school you're looking at to have an overall really strong reputation and strong student experience. Elena's got her work cut out for her, being that single person that's working with all of the head coaches. At Babson, we have a team of counselors that work with me, and we divide up all the different varsity sports, and different folks on our team have those relationships with those varsity coaches. So for example, since I oversee the whole process and do a lot of back-end work with our athletic director and our dean of admission, I currently only read for 2 sports, so men's ice hockey and men's basketball, definitely 2 of our larger, higher priority sports. And then I have 4 colleagues who then divvy up the remaining sports as well. So very much a team effort, and I think that kind of helps split the load a little bit as well when it comes to forging those relationships with families, with students, and of course with the coaching staff as well. As far as the impact that this process has on our reading system, as Elena alluded to at Trinity, at Babson, also our supported recruited athletes do not go to our general committee process. We have a smaller athletic committee before every single application round. And that committee consists of myself, my dean and director of admission, our athletic director, and then my liaison counterpart on the athletic side, which is the men's basketball coach. And so basically we review all of those supported recruited athletes that coaches are looking to offer spots on their team. And actually each then athletic liaison will enter committee and sort of report out and go to bat for those students that their coach is working with. So we kind of have a little bit more of a round table, I would say. So not our whole team, but definitely our whole athletic liaison team will work together through that process with the athletic director, our dean and director of admission as well. So that's kind of how we divvy things up in our process a little bit at Babson.
Okay, great. You both kind of alluded to 2 specific points we might want to kind of go a little bit further on. That specific partnerships embodied with athletics. So we think about like prospect days, ID clinics, camps, oftentimes are hosted by the colleges. Are there specific ways in which your 2 departments work together? So I guess, for example, if you have a big prospect day coming up, do you have someone from admissions offer information session? Do you do like a guided tour with your tour guides? Do you have any specific, I guess, partnerships in place with those departments, or is it more about just the general conversations you have throughout the year with these coaches?
Yeah, I'm happy
Yeah.
to start first if you want, Elena. That way you're not leading every question. So at Babson, I wouldn't say that we have any specific sports related events. But what I will say happens a lot is when a recruit comes and does an overnight or is doing a campus visit, oftentimes they're reaching out to their liaison, the coaches, and saying, "Hey, I have so and so coming to campus. Any chance you as the athletic liaison and kind of the person I work with can sit down in the lobby and chat with them for 15 minutes after their tour." So I say we do a lot of more like one-on-one informal meetings and conversations, but also when coaches are hosting clinics and ID camps, especially in the summer, they'll come over and get admission material and want to make sure they're up to date on anything, the latest news happening as well. I actually every single summer on or around July 1st, which is when we kick off our official pre-read process, we'll do a big athletic kickoff meeting. I'll do a refresh on the admission process, go over current data points about our incoming class, and that kind of serves as that refresher for coaches every year. And I think they really look forward to that meeting. They take that data and they run with it throughout the course of the year. But I'd say for us, it's a bit more informal, I would say, but very much allowing for that very personalized feeling when the recruits get to campus. So they might not be sitting in an auditorium for, a soccer recruitment day, but they're able to come and actually sit down in the lobby in a chair, have coffee, and have those more informal conversations with us.
Yeah, and then I'll say for Trinity, we've got a couple shared calendars between admissions and athletics, and that serves two purposes. One is to encourage the coaches to have their recruits come for the already scheduled visit day programs. We've got one this weekend. It's called Trinity in Focus. So we're going to be hosting, it's a big program, like 300 students. But it's a very robust program. The coach doesn't need to create things for themselves. And then afterwards, they can do an overnight stay or sit in on a class, things like that. So the fabric's already built out. The other way this serves is, yeah, through those camps and just different specific recruitment initiatives led by a coach. They often tag me in or one of my assistants to this. I just did this for softball this weekend, is just a little quick info session that's specifically targeted more towards, okay, what's a student athlete thinking and hitting the relevant points there. And just, putting a face to the name and letting them know that, hey, I'm a person that's going to be reading your application. I'm not some person behind the red curtain saying yay or no, nay, $20,000. It's a very personalized approach. So those programs are great as well and are kind of sports specific. And the last thing I'll say is I love when coaches do this. It like swim, for example, this last week. It wasn't anything specific through admissions, but they just wanted to funnel a lot of their recruits, like 10 recruits, to come for a weekend, and they built the whole itinerary, did an overnight stay, did interviews with us while they were here. And so that was a benefit to the coaches of, hey, that's my big recruitment for this semester. I'm getting everyone here all at once. Bottom line, there's no one size fits all. Everyone has a different method. And as Hannah knows, every coach has their own style. And it helps that we get to know that. And then we can give the recruits advice on, hey, here's a good way to communicate with that specific coach.
Okay, great. Thank you all. So I guess moving on more chronologically, right? We're thinking about this, the application process, the application season is in stages, right? You have your travel, review, committee, and then yield. So it's kind of the same way for athletics, right? You're thinking about, okay, I'm looking at a school as a prospective student athlete. What's that first step I need to do to, I guess, express my interest not only with the coaches, but with the school itself? So there's one integral piece from back when I was at Franklin and Marshall that was really a key piece in that liaison work. It was what's known as a pre-read. So would either one of you want to kind of take a shot at just explaining in so many words, like what that looks like, what that process is, just to our families to understand what it means when a coach asks, when they talk to your family, oh, I'm going to do a pre-read for your son or daughter or your child. Like, what does that look like for you on that end?
I'm happy to take the lead on this one. I feel very strongly about pre-reads. They're essential to our process. I probably do 400 a year, give or take. So yeah, as Matt said, this is kind of the first step in your recruitment journey of, hey, I'm interested in this college. My athletic ability is matching up with the program. Am I admissible? And if so, how much merit scholarship aid am I eligible for? These are key questions that we strive to be super transparent on and early on in the process, because we know how fast paced and intense athletic recruitment can be. So the quicker we can get families that information, it's a win-win on both sides. Even, this is an extreme, but even if the pre-read comes back, and I'll explain what that means in a second, but if it comes back and it says, I'm not admissible, oh my gosh, we understand that's hard news to take, but think about, you're knowing that, towards the end of your junior year, we haven't wasted your time. You can still pursue other options. So that's really why we have this in place. We don't want to get anybody's hopes up. What it is exactly, it's an academic review where, at least for Trinity, we can start reviewing as early as your second semester junior year. So I'm thinking especially my volleyball and my women's soccer, they're pretty quick on this. They'll start sending me their transcripts in January of their junior year. And I start to do a review on the GPA, the course rigor. If they have test scores, do they want me to review those? And just with that information, I give them a general ballpark of, one, are you competitive for admissions? It's not a guarantee. We'll talk about the whole application process next, but it's just that first initial step. Are you competitive? And if so, what's the merit scholarship piece looking like? So that's kind of what we're looking at. Then we're able to tighten it up and provide more accurate pre-reads once you have, a 9th through 11th grade transcript. So most of our pre-reads come in the summer. And again, this is before you even apply to the university. So it's extremely helpful for families to have that intel early on, because oftentimes it's that missing piece that they need to commit to a program and commit early decision, which you're probably going to hear coaches talk a lot about.
I think Elena certainly nails it on the head, and very similar process for us at Babson as well. And I think you'll probably find it a lot of Division III institutions in particular, where we definitely want to be seeing at least through first semester junior grades, right? At Babson, we actually require a final high school transcript through the end of junior year. So we'll do really the majority of our reads starting in and around July 1st. Of course, we also want to see what you're taking in your senior schedule, as Elena mentioned, looking at that overall rigor, your success in the courses that you've taken, and of course, any test scores that you're submitting potentially to that institution as well. In particular, at Babson, being a business-focused institution, your math preparation is really important in our pre-read process, so that math trajectory upwards through pre-calculus will be a really big part in our specific pre-read process. And so I think that's something to consider as well, depending on if you're applying to business-focused programs or more STEM related. There could be certain requirements based on subject area that also the liaison can help walk you through. Maybe if you're submitting that pre-read earlier in the summer or later in the spring of your junior year, and a liaison might recommend a senior course change for you, that sort of thing. So I think, again, being on top of it can be really, really helpful, because you're able to have those conversations earlier and make some changes as well.
Yeah, and actually that brings up another point. If you're, depending on what schools you're looking at, I know Trinity's test optional. Is Babson test optional?
We are, yes.
Oh, okay, so this is relevant for both of us then. This is another aspect in the pre-read we can advise on. So similar to like if senior course list needs some tweaking, this is your opportunity to hear directly from your admissions person. Hey, I'm not quite sure what to do with this test score. How does that work? Is it advantageous for the scholarship? I am happy to have those conversations with you earlier. That way, it's done and dusted and you can enjoy, the rest of your senior year.
Okay. So Elena, you kind of touched upon it initially about like those decisions that are coming back to that are sent to the coaches that are then relayed to the students and their families, that borderline or a negative pre-read. So I was wondering for you both, like what does that process look like if there's a student that's kind of on the bubble, to borrow a sports analogy, like on the bubble between yay or nay? Like how does that process work in terms of you getting intel from the coaches that say, oh, this is one of our top recruits at position X or just top overall? How do you take those, I guess, externalities into account? And in addition to, okay, here's a GPA, here's some test scores, here's the rigor, here's some of that. How do you take into account those additional pieces that may not be as readily apparent on the documents the first time you review them?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can start for us here. So I would say that there's going to be different factors that might lead to a non 100% yes, let's go ahead and recruit the student and support them in admission pre-read. I think, sometimes it is rigor of curriculum. Maybe a student has had a bit slower trajectory taking challenging courses, and we do want to see a bit more challenge in the senior year. Again, that's where a course change might come in through recommendation. Maybe it's a student who is a little bit below academic profile from a grade perspective. Sometimes, at least at Babson, we'll put a little bit of a stipulation on it. We'll say, yes, pending B pluses or better in first quarter. That could be something that comes down the pipeline for us. But when we have that sport that's saying to us, okay, this is my number one pitcher, it's my number one goalie, right? I really need this position player and I really want to lock this student in. Within reason, we can have conversations. I think that, at least in our process, this is where it gets bumped up to our dean of admission to take a second read and a second look at that as well. And we, of course, give them that context, give them the notes about the priority around this position. And oftentimes she and our athletic director are then having a more detailed conversation. But we will allow through our process what are called program changers, at least in our process at Babson, which is where the student could come in and truly change a program for the college. But I will say that this is all within reason, right? We're never going to support a program changer who, yes, might be a little bit below profile, who's not going to stay eligible at Babson, or who isn't going to be able to keep up with the workload. Like, that is super, super important for us. And really at any program. I mean, Elena, you were talking about it earlier where, us saying yes to a student who's not going to do well or be a good fit for the college academically isn't doing anyone any favors, right? It's not helping the student, it's not helping the college, it's not helping the team if they can't stay eligible as well. So those are definitely conversations that are not taken lightly, but I think oftentimes they're elevated conversations, they're course change suggestions, there are stipulations when it comes to maintaining a certain grade throughout the year as well. But every school will handle it a little bit differently. But I think that if someone is a priority and we think they can do the work and can be successful, we oftentimes can make room for some of those additional conversations.
Yeah, I second all of that. That was fantastic. The other thing I was going to add, an interview. So for Trinity, admissions interviews aren't required, but it's under that category of highly encouraged. As a selective institution, you're gonna see that across the board. So if you're serious about a school and it says optional, do it. So this is where in the pre-read process we have a student on the bubble. I'm a big context person, and it's great getting intel from the coaches about maybe why there was a dip in grades or what's going on in the family situation. But I like to take it a step further and set up just a casual 30-minute interview with that student so I can assess their interest in the institution, what they're passionate about on and off the respective field, court, whatever, that's important. And just maybe understand the lower academic profile and suss out, do I think they're going to be successful here? Because at the end of the day, that is our job.
So one final kind of question before we kind of transition to the next topic. Financial aid. I know I'm going to have personally gonna have a session later in the fall. It's going to be kind of addressing financial aid in the broader sense, like your FAFSA, CSS, all those acronyms that not a whole lot of folks outside of higher education know a lot about. But in terms of the pre-read process, does that come into play at all? Because sometimes schools would have like a net price calculator result as part of their required materials. Does that play into effect at all within your institutions?
It does for Trinity. This might be more unique to us. We have a full-blown early financial aid estimate form that's live on our website for any student. They don't have to be a student athlete, but we typically see it utilized a lot by student athletes because they're looking to make a decision early. But it's kind of that super formal pre-read. Once you have your 9th through 11th grade grades, it's a merit review. And then if you're interested in seeing your eligibility for need-based aid, so through the FAFSA and the CSS profile, we would have you fill that out early. And then before you apply to the Trinity and, hopefully you're, committing early decision, you're going to know specifically how much you qualify for.
At Babson, it's not a formal part of our pre-read process, but Matt, as you were mentioning, we have both the net price calculator, which lives on our website, and then also My Intuition as well. So two great tools to get a sense of what a potential need-based aid package could be like at Babson. What I'll also add is we have an amazing student financial services office, as I imagine Trinity does as well, especially when you're able to have those more personalized relationships with your students and your families and help them through the process. And so we do actually have a colleague there who is our specific recruited athlete counselor, which is super, super great. She was a former athlete at Babson. She understands what it's like to go through the process. And so oftentimes if families are a little bit nervous about finances, or if that's going to be a big piece of the process and they do feel like they want to go early decision, but they're not sure if it's the right step for them, they're able to have those one-on-one conversations with that colleague specifically. So she loves working with the supported and recruited athletes, and I think that that goes a long way with our families in the process. But I think this kind of, goes into also that conversation about early decision, right? With recruited athletes as well. I think no matter what level you're being recruited at, coaches are always going to want to lock a student in and get that commitment from you through that early decision process. And I would say that at least at Babson, the vast majority of our supported recruits will come in through early decision, but it's not the right choice for everyone, right? When applying through an early decision 1 or 2 application round, that is a binding agreement. You are signing a contract, your family is signing a contract, your college counselor is signing the contract saying, if I am admitted, I will attend. And, colleges depend on those decisions. We depend on that yield, right, when shaping our class. So it's important on a lot of different fronts. But I always want to make sure that we talk about this even at the Division III level, because as much as you want to play a sport at that school that you're being recruited at, if early decision is not right for you, don't succumb to that pressure that perhaps a coach is with their best interest in mind, trying to suggest you to go early decision. You might be a student who, again, finances are in play, maybe early action or regular decision. If a school offers you either one of those is a better fit for you. Perhaps you are a really, really strong academic student, and maybe your support system, either at home or at school, is telling you you could be a merit scholarship contender and you don't want to lock into a specific school. Maybe you're still having multiple conversations with different coaches, right? It could be a number of different things. But I think there's just so much stress and attention in the media about how early decision prone US colleges are. And while it is a great tool, again, for institutions to shape a class and to oversee enrollment, the biggest and most important question is it right for that student, whether you're a supported recruited athlete or just a student looking to make the right choice for you?
Okay, great. So now we're kind of just wrapping things up in more of like the advice kind of portion of our conversation and thinking about it through the way of applying to colleges as a prospective student athlete. So we think about, you review hundreds, if not thousands, applications over multiple years. You've read thousands of essays, you've read recommendation letters, you've seen the effort it takes to craft a very well received application. So I guess I just open up the floor for the both of y'all. What, I guess, advice do you have for those students that are looking to play sports at the smaller level? How do you incorporate that effectively but not overblown within the rest of your application, if you understand kind of what I'm trying to go with here?
Love this question. Thank you, Matt, for bringing this up. I get to share this tidbit with all of my recruits year after year. I think it's very important. We already know that you're a recruited student athlete. If you went through the proper channels, we're gonna know, we're gonna see that code in the system that you're working with a coach. So use the application to highlight other areas that you're passionate in and how you spend your time out of the classroom and out of the pool, off the court, whatever. Because especially at D3 schools, we're going to be looking at what else you bring to our small communities, right? Academically, what are you excited to dabble in? Different clubs and organizations. That's what Division III allows you to do. You're not going to have a 45-hour a week full-time job as a Division I athlete. You're going to have a lot of time in your schedule to pursue other options. So in that application, highlight those other areas. And the other thing I'll share is just about the essay really quick. A lot of student athletes have been through an injury, right? It's something we can all relate on, and the classic cliche comeback from an injury story. 5,000 other students could have written about their ACL tear and how they came back. So it's not that that wasn't important to you in your high school journey and your development, but use the essay to tell us something new that's really unique to you and not just being generally a student athlete. So that's kind of the 2 cents that I would share.
And just to piggyback off of some of Elena's points, I think the big picture here is to remember that nothing is final until you have your admit package in your hands, right? Even if a coach is telling you, you have a spot on my team, you give them a verbal offer, you're applying through maybe an early decision round, again, if that's right for you, nothing is official until you have that admit package in your hand. So it is really important, just as Elena was saying, to make sure you're filling out your application in a really well-rounded way, right? So maybe, veer off the path and not write about something sports related, because we are going to know that you're a supported recruit, we promise you. Make sure that you're filling out that activities list really thoroughly. And also make sure you're paying attention to any supplemental questions an institution has as well, right? Sometimes it can be really frustrating when we're reviewing a student in athletic committee and they're highly ranked for the coach, and we get to their essays and there's only maybe like 2 sentences there per question, right? Like that rips a little bit of our heart out, because we're like, oh, we know how much the student does want to be here and will be an integral part of the team, but they're not really giving us a whole lot otherwise outside of the fact that we know that they're a recruited athlete. So you want to make sure that when you're, filling out your application, that you're doing it really well and in a well-rounded way. Both institutions here care about the whole person. Yes, we very much recognize and appreciate the athletic ability that you have and what you'll give to the institution, but we also want to make sure that you're going to enjoy overall campus life and your experience over the course of 4 years as well. God forbid something happened to you via injury or you weren't able to remain on part of the team, we want you to still be happy on that college campus and at that institution as well. So while athletics might be leading the charge for you in your college process, you want to make sure that you are interested in programs that they offer and that you think it'll be a good fit for you, socially, and also make sure that it is your journey, right? When your family drops you off at your institution on that very first day and they say goodbye to you, it's you behind those closed doors, it's your experience. And I think that's a really important thing to remember as well.
Right. And I would also add, just from my personal experience background, most schools, your applications can be reviewed by someone has no ties to athletics. We have athletics liaisons, but oftentimes these schools' first app reviewers are the territory managers, or they're the admission officer for a specific college or major. So keep that in mind, that the person that reads your application first might not have any interest or connection to athletics as a whole. So the last thing you want to do is kind of alienate him or her with just making your entire application sports centric. So kind of keep that in mind, just because not every school is where the athletics liaison is the only person reviewing the applications too.
That's actually a great point, Matt, and something I want to kind of double down on there is that when we go into athletic committee, we do kind of a call out to our team to make sure that they're just organically reading applications throughout the process. So oftentimes they have no idea that the student hasn't been tagged yet, right, as a recruited athlete. And even when there's some still remaining in our process that need to be read, we very much emphasize that you should be reading that student as a traditional applicant and not letting any bias come into the conversation, because it is really important to do reads on all students as much of a, level playing field when it comes to how we review applications. So that's a really important piece, I think, in all of our processes.
So before we close this session, I just want to open up the floor for you two. If there's anything else you'd like to add, I think we had kind of the advice for the application, but is there anything that you would want to impart on our viewers, whether they're families or specific student athletes' perspectives themselves, like how they kind of navigate this process in conjunction with their overall college search process?
I have a lot of tidbits running through my mind. I'm going to limit it to just a couple. This process can be overwhelming, and you're going to see a lot on social media and on ESPN, and it's confusing. Stay true to yourself, because at the end of the day, this is your college journey. Trust me, I work with transfer students. You want to just go to one school. It's easier. So, take time throughout this process to pause and reflect on what you truly want, because maybe sophomore you wanted X, Y, and Z, and then you're at junior year, you've developed in a different way, and you're like, oh, actually now I want A, B, and C. And that is totally fine. I just encourage you to lean into that and not get lost in what your high school teammates are doing, what your coaches are telling you to do. I'm sure they have the best intention in mind. But we're wanting you to find the best fit for you. And so that is what, if and when you get injured at some point in college, it's like, okay, well, at least thank goodness I chose this school because I love the student body, or I love the location. Like, there are other areas that are serving you and checking off those boxes for you, because at the end of the day, y'all, there's more to life after college athletics. I think it's like less than 2% of college athletes go on to professional, might be even less than that. Okay. So it's not the end all be all. Of course, enjoy it while this lasts. It's a really special time in your life. But it's also simply a stepping stone to your next 40 years in a career.
I would say too, if you have an inkling early on, right? So if you're listening to this call and you're maybe, in ninth and 10th grade, and you know that you potentially want to play a sport in college, start the process early. I mean, I think Elena alluded to this, right? Like, sometimes coaches are working with students starting in their sophomore year, maybe even sooner, and just like having initial conversations, of course, depending on eligibility and all the rules and everything, right? But maybe they've gotten on their radar at a certain point. So it doesn't hurt to reach out earlier rather than later in the process. I can't tell you how many students, even already in this travel season, that I've visited that said, oh, I really was thinking about playing lacrosse at Babson, but I reached out to the coach too late. His roster is pretty much like already finalized, right? We would never want that to be the case for you. And so if you are thinking about it, fill out those recruit me forums on college websites, and then follow up with the coaching staff, right, and start those conversations. So I think that's a really good piece of advice in the process. And I think both Elena and I have both said this over the course of this call. Make the process yours, right? It is your journey. And I think too, if you are traveling with parents and families and support systems to different colleges, parents and families, let your student lead the way, right? Let them do the talking and lead the conversations, because it is their process, and we want to make sure that they do, rightfully so, have that level of ownership in the process as well. But it is such a stressful time, especially when you get into your senior year. So take everything one step at a time. And I think oftentimes students have, in their head, this one specific dream school that they're dying to go to. And it's amazing when that works out, but there are so many wonderful institutions out there. And no matter where you end up, whether you play a college sport or not, you're going to have a great experience, a great education, because you're going to put into your experience what you want to get out of it. And I think at the end of the day, that's really an important thing to remember as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you both, Elaine and Hannah, for your knowledge and personal experiences. I hope it's very valuable for our families to understand this process is complex, but not too overwhelming if you have a lot more information, right? And so these folks, whether they're at these two schools I have on the call right now, or any other schools, their counterparts are great resources to help you kind of navigate that process in addition to your college search process. So once again, thank you for tuning in, and hope you have a good rest of the day, night, evening, morning, wherever you are logging in from. Thanks again.
Thank you.